Take one. Hi there, it's me again. I've gotten a little bit dressed up because this is a special occasion, my one YouTube video of the year. I kind of don't feel like making this video right now, but like fuck it man, let's just do it anyway. So last year, in 2023, I watched 200 movies, and that might sound like a lot to you, but it's only 40% of what I watched in each of the past 2 years. It's also way more than I should have watched because I was supposed to be watching TV shows this year. And I don't know what it is about TV shows, but I just have a hard time with them. I just really prefer watching movies. And in 2024, I'm not gonna get back to 500 movies, but I do wanna hit 365. I swear to God, I'm gonna watch The Sopranos someday. I swear to God. Now, because I didn't watch as many movies, this video might be significantly shorter than the other two. I don't know, I haven't written it yet. I'll keep the same format, but maybe I'll spend more time talking about particular films. Also, I don't think I'm gonna have guest segments this time around. I think the guest segments last year were great, but they're also a big reason why the video took so long to come out. Of course, it's now February when I'm filming this, so it's already super late. But whatever. Let me also just say for 2023 in general, this was quite possibly the most exciting year of my life. I met a lot of new people, I met some new friends, I'm not sure they still like me. I worked on a lot of really cool projects all over the country, Miami, Atlanta, Los Angeles, of course New York. Living in Brooklyn was great. I love Brooklyn. I love Sergio. He's probably the most iconic dog ever. I also went out of the country this year to Morocco and Italy and more. So a lot, yeah. Let's just not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and get right into it with January. From the first month of this year, one thing that really sticks out to me is how much more I avoided watching bad films than I had the past 2 years. And this actually really pisses me off because in last year's video, I went on this whole tirade about how important it is to watch bad movies. And apparently I just have no principles whatsoever. Of the 17 films I saw in January, my lowest rating was for a rewatch of Star Trek Into Darkness, which I really did not remember being that bad. It honestly feels like even more of a disaster than The Rise of Skywalker. That movie got stuck in this weird position where they decided to backpedal everything that The Last Jedi did, but at least it still looks pretty good. At least it has a John Williams score. At least it has some cool action scenes and cute creatures. Yeah, the writing is pretty embarrassing and, you know, silly, but it still feels like Star Wars. And Star Trek Into Darkness just fundamentally misunderstands the appeal of Star Trek. There's this weird attempt at fan service by making benefactor Cumberslut into Khan, but like, why? And why does the movie do so much in the first half to make you think it's not gonna rehash Wrath of Khan, just to rehash it anyway? Why is the tone of this movie so dark and action-oriented? Unlike earlier Star Trek films, there's not really any exploration of ideas about technology or society. It's just a bunch of CGI spaceships crashing into each other and needlessly sexualizing the female characters. This movie is just a mess. Most of the movies I watched in January were pretty good though. I was a little bit iffy on both Tar and The Banshees of Inisherin, but I understand why people like them. I would say that I respect these movies more than I really enjoy them. My favorite of the Best Picture nominees was Steven Spielberg's The Fabelmans, which I saw this month. This is just a brutally honest, like semi-autobiographical family drama, and it has one of my favorite endings to any movie ever. This Romanian movie called 4 Months, 3 Weeks, and 2 Days. It's like this harrowing, realistic depiction of an illegal abortion. It's just gut-wrenchingly suspenseful, despite being very procedural and totally lacking in melodrama. I can't recommend this to everyone, but if you like movies that are kind of bleak and upsetting, go for it. Some other movies I liked this month were Go, Christine, The Whale, Ernest and Celeste, 7 Women, 7 Beauties, and my favorite of the month, 7 Samurai. This is one of the last movies I had been saving for the theatrical experience, and I had to sit in the front row, and I missed the first minute or two, but fucking hell, what a picture. Not only is it epic in scale, with incredible set pieces where hundreds of things are moving around at once, but it's also a really funny movie. I think a lot of people assume classic, prestigious foreign films are gonna be unapproachable or hard to watch, but this movie is such a crowd pleaser. It is simple and entertaining, and it is really long, but I would still recommend this to anyone who likes watching movies. I watched it at the Metrograph on 35mm. In February, I literally saw barely any movies, just 6. I would like to say I was watching more TV shows at the time, and that might be true, but genuinely I can't remember. Perhaps I was just truly on the grind set this year. My job as an editor, that was in full swing. I was working on this project that was a Holocaust documentary, but also a music video, but also an anniversary video for this couple that were literally 100 years old. And that was such a fucking weird project. We spent so long on it, going through so many iterations. We were very disorganized in the office, but you know, I kind of enjoyed getting up in the morning and having coffee and like driving to work and being at work and driving home from work. There was structure, but the schedule was still pretty flexible, but also the schedule for paying me was pretty flexible. I don't know how much more I should say about this job. I think that pretty much covers it. Of the movies I actually did watch in February, the worst is called 13. This has the same director as Twilight, and the movies are surprisingly similar in style. However, 13 has a very repetitive story and really cheesy dialogue. I'm also starting to realize that when I don't like the protagonist of a movie, there's a very little chance I will like the movie. And I know depiction is an endorsement and all that, and there's plenty of movies like American Psycho or Taxi Driver or whatever where the main character is obviously a bad person, and I still like the movie, but the movie is good because the protagonist is interesting and layered and has a character arc that isn't so predictable. And I bring all of this up just to say that the protagonist of 13 sucks. She starts taking drugs and then she won't shut up about how much she hates her mom. I don't know. Who wants to watch this? The best movie I saw in February would probably be the All Quiet on the Western Front remake. It's not like a true classic, but it's just extremely well made technically, and the acting is good. The best thing I watched overall in February actually was a TV show, or more specifically a miniseries, and that is Roots, written by Alex Haley. The way it transcends generations is such a unique premise, and it's filled with amazing characters. I love all the different protagonists of this show, and I felt so connected with them as they experienced all of this heartbreak and trauma. The series has definitely aged a lot and is a product of its time, but I think that the messages are still relevant, and the letterboxd review I wrote for this is pretty long, but probably some of my best review writing I've ever done. In March, I watched 15 movies. Not great, but still better than February, and I actually did a whole lot of stuff this month too. I went home to Virginia for a while to help make a campaign video for Lachlan's mom, and I hung out with an old pal. We saw Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, which I think is the worst MCU movie and by far the worst movie I saw all month. Genuinely, this movie looks like garbage. It's the most CGI shit show thing ever. Nothing feels grounded in any type of reality. It all just looks like computer generated sludge. The dialogue in this is complete self-parody. Kang is a ridiculous villain. The main father-daughter relationship has all of these super unearned moments, and the pacing of this movie is so awkward because Michelle Pfeiffer's character just refuses to advance the plot for almost the entire runtime. And then the ending of the movie just undercuts everything that happens. There's this bit where Ant-Man is supposed to sacrifice himself, but of course he's fine, and then he's like, "Nobody knows I saved the world." Or did I? And of course, Jonathan Majors is canceled now, and so they had to change Avengers 5 from the Kang Dynasty to some other shit. I don't know what it is now. I mean, originally I was gonna say the ending just feels inconsequential, but actually this movie is negative in terms of its consequences. Later this month, I went to Chicago for St. Patrick's Day because I wanted to see the Green River, but when I got there, I found out that they had dyed it the week before, which was very devastating. However, it was great to see all of my Chicago friends. I really missed these guys, and I really missed Allison Freeman, who wasn't even fucking there. Jacob and I hung out a lot. We saw Creed 3, which was good. That was my first time at an Alamo Draft House. Pretty cool place. One thing that's cool about hanging out with Jacob is he has all of this nerd shit. He doesn't get a guest segment this year, but I will show you his Criterion closet collection thing.
This is me and my roommate's movie shelf, and we're gonna go through and pick out some of my favorites. The first section is all of our Criterion Blu-rays. My first pick is gonna be Brazil, Terry Gilliam. One of the most creative movies I've ever seen. It's about a man in this dystopian future who wants to escape the system and dream and be free of this oppressive society. Lots of great practical effects, cool makeup, very funny too. There's a great performance by Robert De Niro in a supporting role. And this Blu-ray is cool because it has Terry Gilliam's director's cut. We're gonna move down, and I'm gonna pick Michael Mann's Thief. This is a very important movie to me. Donovan as well. We saw this together on 35mm at midnight at the Music Box, and it was grainy, grimy print. Great performance by James Caan. Really awesome score. The villain in this movie, as Donovan said, is incredible. His performance is disgusting.
Bro, he's scary.
He's scary as hell.
This movie also is based politics.
Yeah, this movie is very based.
Brazil is based too.
Brazil, I'm only picking based movies in this video. Jacob's based picks. We're gonna move now to the other miscellaneous Blu-rays. First, we have some cool releases from Arrow Video. I got these at Barnes & Noble. I'm gonna be a little bit controversial here. David Lynch's Dune.
That's crazy.
I am one of the few people who love David Lynch's Dune. Amazing practical effects, and it really captures the old school camp of sci-fi very well. The score by Toto is really banging. Dune is such a dense book, and I think this movie adapted it in the best way that was possible at that time. I do think the new Dune that came out with Timothy was great and a better movie than this. I just have a soft spot in my heart for this movie, and I think you guys should give it a chance. Go in with an open mind, and you might surprise yourself at how awesome this movie is. My favorite actor is the one and only Nicolas Cage, and my favorite DVD that I have is Con Air. This movie is awesome. It's one of the most maximalist 90s action movies that's kind of self-aware, but not in an annoying way, but in a way that really commits to the epicness of it. Nicolas Cage delivers an awesome performance as usual, with one of the worst southern accents I've ever heard in my life. He has long flowing hair and a beard, and he's jacked. John Malkovich as the villain is one of my favorite on-screen performances from anyone ever. He's so funny. He's so evil, he's so smart. Steve Buscemi is hilarious as like this Hannibal Lecter type. This movie just is awesome. It's got weird 90s politics, but it's kind of based. What a picture. I think I have time for one more. We're gonna return to the Criterion section for one of my favorite movies of all time. Paul Thomas Anderson's Punch Drunk Love.
Whoa.
This movie is very, very important to me. I really resonate with this story. I think it's really beautiful. It's funny. It's sad. It feels very real. The score is great. The performances by Adam Sandler and Emily Watson are both phenomenal. Philip Seymour Hoffman is in this movie. Shut up! I can't say enough nice things about this movie. It's just truly beautiful, and it's one of my favorite movies of all time, and it makes me happy every time I watch it.
Toward the end of March, I was the cinematographer for and actor in this music video directed by the one and only Anahita von Adrian Werberg. I had to get in all of this old man makeup for this role, and I really loved being a part of this set. I think we had a lot of fun, and the music video is just as much fun. Also, Anahita worked really hard editing this for like months, so if you haven't seen it, you should watch it. Okay, I almost forgot to mention the good movies that I saw this month. I thought After Sun has a really powerful way of showing memories, and it gets better the more I think about it. Triangle of Sadness was pretty funny, but I don't really think about it anymore, except for this one part from the beginning that lives in my head rent-free.
Balenciaga, H&M, Balenciaga, H&M.
My favorite film I saw in March is called Dogfight. This is directed by Nancy Savoca and stars River Phoenix as a young Marine who is soon to get shipped out to Vietnam in 1962. The Vietnam War has this looming presence in the background, which makes the romance feel more tragic and doomed, but at the same time, there's so much chemistry between the two leads that you kind of get wrapped up in the moment anyway. It's a really simple movie, but I think it's very effective because the execution is so solid. In April, I kind of picked up right where I left off. I was the gaffer on this music video for a really cool song with 2 shoot days. The second shoot day was this all-night shoot, and then the morning after, like a couple hours later, I was helping out on another music video for a song that's also really cool. For a lot of April, I was watching Maya's cat, Inez, and she's a really nice cat, but you know, she would get into heat, she would start acting insane. Ultimately, she seduced Sergio. Like, he was really trying to smash, trying to get some interspecies pussy. Anyway, movies that I watched in April. There were only 7, which is quite unfortunate, but honestly, the fact that I got to 200 in a year at this rate is starting to sound way more impressive. Here's my ranking of all 7 April movies. 7th place, Jimmy Neutron, Boy Genius. I watched this because I wanted to have something bad to talk about for this month, but now that we're here, I don't want to talk about this at all. 6th place, The Equalizer. This is a silly ass movie. You could easily justify saying it's not good, but it's also kind of great. 5th place, Polite Society. Really fun movie, definitely a bit low budget budget but energetic and creative, and I would recommend this to my mom and my sister. Fourth place, Paris, Texas. I wanted to like this more. I saw it in a theater, so it would be my milestone 2,500th logged film on Letterboxd, and the movie is gorgeous to look at, but I didn't really feel involved in the story the way I hoped I would be. Third place, Titan. I also wanted to like this more, but it's definitely good, and the acting stands out as the strongest element of the movie. Second place, American Honey. I like this way more than I thought I would. The acting is also really good in this movie, and I liked the aesthetic of it as well. First place, RRR. This movie whips ass. It is so fucking epic. The action is epic. The story is epic. The characters are epic. The music is epic. The cinematography is epic. I feel like I need to watch this again right now. In May, I also only watched 7 movies. How did I live like this? I must have been going through like crazy withdrawal. On the plus side, May was one of the most exciting months of my life. At the beginning, I went to Miami to help shoot the Cayenne Speed Show trailer. Whatever happened to that anyway? I don't know. There was a point on set where iShowSpeed asked me to demonstrate a spinning roundhouse kick for him, and I did, which, you know, it was surreal, but then we had to keep shooting, like we're on a schedule. Chop chop, bitch. We went to this insane party after the wrap. There was a Power Ranger on stilts. There was this guy using a water jetpack. The party was sponsored by some vape company, so I left with a bunch of free vapes. I don't even like vapes. I almost fought one of the Nelk boys, or whatever they're called. Jake Paul was supposedly there. I don't fucking know. I should have fought him. I may have gotten my ass kicked, but I would have learned a valuable lesson. I may have kicked his ass, and he would have learned a valuable lesson. Anyway, that's probably my biggest regret from Miami. Later in May, we went to California to shoot a short film that Lachlan and I co-wrote and would be co-directing. We are still editing it now, but I think the movie is really cool. I met a lot of cool people on that set, and I'm very grateful for everyone's help. And there were times where it was really, really stressful, but fuck, dude, I just want to direct movies for the rest of my life, you know? We wrapped after 3 days of shooting at like 3 a.m. and immediately we had to go to the airport and fly to New York and then drive from JFK all the way down to Maryland and make this music video for Ashley Kutcher. Lachlan and I had co-directed a music video before, but it was a lot bigger this time. There are definitely a couple hiccups here and there. The video ultimately turned out pretty solid. And again, we had a lot of fun on this set. After Maryland, I was driving back to New York with Max McGuire, producer slash behind the scenes photographer extraordinaire, and I was driving on the New Jersey Turnpike and we got a blown out tire. So I pulled over to the left shoulder and we sat there on the side of the turnpike waiting for a tow truck for like an hour, over an hour. When we finally got back to the apartment in Brooklyn at like 4 in the morning, we put the key in the lock and it wouldn't budge. And eventually it got stuck and broke off in the lock with half the key still in there. So we're fucking trapped outside. Fortunately, we live in a basement with a back alley, and I went in the back alley, and by some miracle, the back door was open. So we were able to finally get to sleep. That was one of the longest nights ever. Oh, fuck, dude. I forgot to talk about the movies for this month again. Okay, here's my ranking for all 7 movies that I watched in May. 7th place, The Covenant. This is the worst Jake Gyllenhaal performance I can think of. 6th place, Possibly in Michigan. This is like an experimental short film on YouTube. I don't really remember anything about it. I just know it was weird. 5th place, Dead Ringers. Jeremy Irons is pretty good in this, but I definitely fell asleep like halfway through. 4th place, Anomalous. This is a good movie, but it kind of feels like a tame version of Charlie Kaufman's other movies. I don't feel like it has the same depth as, say, Synecdoche, New York, or even like Being John Malkovich. 3rd place, Guardians of the Galaxy 3. I feel pretty comfortable calling this the greatest trilogy in superhero movies, at least until Beyond the Spider-Verse comes out. 2nd place, Fight Club. I've seen this before, but you know, this movie is great. I think it gets better with age. I don't really have anything new or fresh to say about it. I just think it's a great movie. In 1st place, The Grand Budapest Hotel. Probably Wes Anderson's most iconic movie, and for good reason. His style became so fully realized here in a way that his earlier movies weren't quite at the level of in terms of how intricate and symmetrical everything is. I still really like Wes Anderson's early period, but this movie feels like a turning point in his career. The interweaving narratives, the use of different mediums and aspect ratios, the specificity of the color palette, and the mise-en-scene that's just on another level. And all of that is really what Wes Anderson is known for now. But even if you put aside all of that, like auteur theory, it's just like a fantastic movie with great comedy, interesting characters, and like fun set pieces with action and excitement. In June, we left Brooklyn. Lachlan and I drove across the country together. This was a very memorable road trip. Sergio attacked a family of ducks in Nebraska and later swallowed a bird whole in Utah. There was a monkey at the motel pool in Illinois. Illinois. We were visiting Chicago, and I was driving down Michigan Avenue straight towards the full moon while listening to Claire de Lune. It felt like we could have flown off the highway and just landed on the lunar surface. We were in Nevada, and we almost ran out of gas. Lachlan was asleep, and the fuel light came on, so I started looking for the nearest gas station, and it was like 35 miles away, and the car said we only had 30 miles of gas left. I turned off the AC, I turned off the radio, I started driving a little slower, and then this great fucking storm rolled in, and I was so certain that we were gonna be stranded in the desert while it was raining. And Lachlan woke up in the middle of this, and he was like, what's going on? Oh shit, oh fuck. But ultimately, we did make it to the gas station with like half a mile to spare, like a couple drops in the tank, you know? And ultimately, we got to Los Angeles, and Lachlan moved to this house in Silver Lake, and I just ended up crashing on Max McGuire's couch for like almost the whole month. And then at the end of that, I helped him move everything out of his apartment. Fuck, dude, isn't this video supposed to be about movies? I actually watched 25 in June, which is like a decent number. I watched Max's favorite movie, Hot Summer Nights, and Lachlan's favorite movie, Buffalo 66. Although that's, for him, that's like tied with The Aviator and When Harry Met Sally. Buffalo 66 specifically, I think it's a really interesting character study. It's an unusual movie, but it's really captivating because it's hard to predict. And there's a bluntness to the filmmaking that you just can't look away from. Some of my other favorite movies I saw this month are Now You See Me, The Mist, Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, I liked it just a touch more than the first movie, and Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters. I definitely need to re-watch it to fully understand what was going on there. One thing that happened to me a lot this year while watching movies is I just didn't process the story that much. I think I did this before too, but this year I just felt very conscious of me not really grasping the story of a movie while I'm watching it. For Mishima, A Life in 4 Chapters, that kind of makes sense because it's bouncing around between several different plot lines, you know, fiction and reality, past and present. But for other movies, they're like straightforward, and I think I might just be stupid. Like I might just be running out of brain cells or some shit. My favorite film that I saw in June is Birdman. This is a pretty cynical movie, but if you read between the lines, there's touches of hopefulness sprinkled in there as well. Mostly, I think this is just so creative and incredibly well executed on every level. The dialogue, the acting, the camera work, the editing, the visual effects, the music. This movie just fires on every cylinder. I definitely want to watch it again because I know there's going to be so much more for me to appreciate about it. I did also see quite a few bad movies in June, which is a good thing. I wanted to like The Fault in Our Stars, but it was really cringy. Meet Joe Black, the longest movie ever for no reason. 2014 RoboCop is so much more boring than a RoboCop movie needs to be. And the worst movie of the month comes down to two very different films. The first one is called Trump versus the Illuminati. It is 100% obvious that this was just made as a shitpost and put on Amazon Prime for people to get high and laugh at, but I tried to watch this sober and it is truly unbearable. There's not a single competent aspect to this. I recommend it only as a test of endurance. The other movie is called Air, and it's directed by Ben Affleck, and it is one of the most acclaimed movies of last year, and for the life of me, I cannot figure out why. This movie has no reason to exist. It has a stupid premise. It has the most boring characters with so much repetitive dialogue and just horrible, unfunny jokes. It's filled to the brim with 80s music to trick you into thinking that it's fun and energetic and worth watching, and somehow this worked on most people because nobody ever mentions the blatantly obvious stock footage or the tediously static blocking or the fact that the story feels like it has no stakes because you already know the ending and there's nothing to care about because the characters in this movie are so devoid of personality or having anything interesting going on. I really do not understand what people like about this at all. All of the good Letterboxd reviews just call it a great dad movie, and I'm sorry, but you're gonna have to do better than that. You're gonna have to give me an actual reason that this is good. You know, I respect Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, but this movie genuinely soured me on them for months because it costs $90 million to make, and it looks like a commercial that you might see watching, you know, fucking tennis. I spent most of July July in other countries. I had always wanted to go to Italy and to Morocco. I saw Rick's Cafe in Casablanca and a pile of cow shit in Marrakesh. We rode dromedaries, not camels, and hiked in the Atlas Mountains. I saw the Statue of David and the Sistine Chapel. I saw the Leaning Tower of Pisa and the Colosseum. I saw the ruins of Pompeii and the canals of Venice. I went to a cheese factory where they make Parmigiano Reggiano. It was fucking nuts. The pizza over there really is better though. I saw 15 movies throughout July, just 3 of which while I was across the pond, but this has included both the best and the worst film of the month. The best is Buster Keaton's The General. This is one of the most ambitious silent films ever, and the stunt work pulled off here is nothing short of jaw-dropping. It's action-packed and funny and has the feel of a true classic, especially because of the troubling Confederate protagonist angle. The worst was Slender Man. I knew this was going to be bad, but it did not have to be this bad. It could have just been like a shitty monster movie, but it makes every wrong choice. I think it has some of the worst acting I've ever seen. The plot literally makes no sense whatsoever. I remember thinking there were a few things I liked about the editing, but for the most part, this was so forgettable. I have nothing else to say about it. The third was actually the one I watched first while we were still in Morocco, and that was Because I'm a Cheerleader, which is a hilarious movie. The satire is so over the top, and so are the costumes and the sets and the characters. It's just a fucking romp. Before leaving the US, I watched and I really liked Ghost in the Shell. Rewatching Casablanca on the way to the airport was great. Gets better every time. Rewatching Godzilla vs. Kong on the plane in Italian with Arabic subtitles was amazing because understanding the dialogue in that movie is a terrible decision, but everything else about it is awesome. At the end of the month, I saw Barbie, which I enjoyed, although it's definitely flawed. And a few days later, I watched Oppenheimer, which is one of the biggest achievements in filmmaking of the year, and maybe ever. The performances, the sound design, the music, one of the best biopics ever. The last movie I saw in July, I also watched on a plane, but this time I was headed to California, is the movie Repo Man, 1984. This shit is super wild. It's very pulpy and strange, and if you like that kind of thing, watch Repo Man. Here we go again. August, yet another month in which I only watched 7 movies. I don't know why 7 was like the number of the year. August was, as you might expect from my lack of movie watching, a very busy month in my life. I went back to California. I helped choreograph a fight scene for this music video. We smashed the lead singer's head through a wall. I was also the editor for this video, and I was editing another video that they shot the day after, but we had issues finding a VFX artist who could pull off the effects we wanted for the first video, so I ended up having to do a lot of that shit myself, and I ended up spending almost my entire 21st birthday rotoscoping. We did go see Train to Busan at our friend's studio movie night, which I had seen before, but you know. And that video that I choreographed the fight for and did all that rotoscoping, it ended up getting shelved by the label. That's showbiz, baby. The real crazy part of August was making Global Pursuit. Lachlan got the call from Kai Cenat, not directly, but that Kai Cenat wanted to make a short film, and we weren't even really sure if this was a real job or not, but you know, we set off, driving across the country, this time headed for Atlanta. We were finishing the editing on the Leah Kate video, the other video that never came out, also while writing the script for Global Pursuit and starting to produce it. All of this while we were on the road. This road trip was a lot less memorable. We did have to leave Sergio behind, which was sad. Okay, so making Global Pursuit in Atlanta. This was a wild job. We shot the whole thing in 3 days with 1 day of rehearsal beforehand. The finished product was to be done and released 4 days after we wrapped. So to make sure we were on schedule, I was editing on set. As soon as footage was shot, it was getting dumped and I was cutting it up on the timeline. The hardest part turned out to be like putting the final touches on it, you know, sound design, graphics, that kind of shit. We were supposed to export in 4K, but we actually ran out of time to meet the release deadline, so we exported in 1080. But, you know, it's like they say, you're never finished, just finished enough. Of course, the most fun part was reading all of the nice Letterboxd reviews that people left once the movie was out. All right, look, I want to talk about Global Pursuit just as a movie a bit. In a second here, I'm going to rank it as my 7th place movie of August. And I just want to say, I feel like it's dangerous for me to be sharing my opinions about movies on the internet so openly. Like, if I actually want to be somebody in this industry, somebody might see one of these videos or read one of my Letterboxd reviews, and I happen to say something mean about a movie that someone worked on, and now that person doesn't want to hire me. And that sucks, because I'm going to be the first one to criticize my own work. And, you know, seeing people trash this movie I made, like, did that suck? Yeah, it did. And I started feeling very defensive about it because maybe if people knew the behind the scenes, they would be more forgiving. But you know, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter at all. We are still making a final product, and the final product has to be judged for what it is. And I wouldn't want people to soften their criticisms or at all be dishonest about their thoughts on the movie to protect my feelings. So I guess I believe in the rule of treat others as you wish to be treated, and I wish to be treated with honesty, even if you are insulting me. But at the same time, I do think I should try and not be so mean with my criticisms. Hopefully I haven't been too mean in this video or my reviews, because, you know, I understand how hard it is to make a movie. And when I'm criticizing the final product of a film, I don't mean it as a criticism of the people who worked on that film. To even make a bad film is an achievement that takes talent and work ethic and blood, sweat, and tears. And when movies don't turn out well, there's usually like some weird extenuating circumstances. And also it's important to remember that art is subjective. And just because I like a movie that other people hate or dislike a movie that other people love, that's just my opinion. And it's not objectively more or less correct than other people's. Although I probably will make a better argument for my opinion. Respectfully. So let's rank the 7 movies I saw in August, starting with 7th place, Global Pursuit. It's not good, you guys. I think the criticism I saw on Letterboxd was a bit over the top from people who are desperate to either sound like they know what they're talking about or just absent-mindedly making jokes. But you know, on some real shit, I think Jason did a great job as director of photography. I think Kai has a lot of charisma and screen presence in his role. I think the costume design is good, and I think there are a lot of genuinely funny jokes throughout. But there's also a lot of problems, mostly with the writing. And as a credited writer of this film, I feel very qualified to talk about that. A big problem with this movie is that nothing happens organically. Everything in this movie only occurs for the sake of the movie. The characters are not believable as real people at any point. Any sense of narrative cohesion is sacrificed to make jokes that end up not landing because the jokes are structured more like memes than things that make sense for the characters to say or do. Also, the word Riz is used too many times. I think the word Riz is funny, and I use it pretty regularly. But when you hear Ray say, "I have Riz," 3 times in the span of 20 seconds in an accent that barely registers as English, it gets a little tiring. You know, I think if we had more time to flesh out the ideas of this script and the style of comedy we were going for, there would be a massive improvement. And I think the same thing about the performances and the fight choreography. The effort really was there. We just didn't have any time. 6th place, The Card Counter. I was really disappointed by this. It feels like Paul Schrader doing an impression of his own writing. I think the filmmaking could have had a lot more energy and dynamicism. I understand why it doesn't, but this movie really put me to sleep. 5th place, Cobra, dumb action movie. Best not to think too hard about it. I like Sylvester Stallone. 4th place, Limitless. Also probably best not to think too hard about this. There's a lot of cool visual mind-melty shit going on here, and I really enjoyed that aspect of it. 3rd place, Rush Hour 2. We watched this to help prepare for Global Pursuit. This movie is a total romp. Look, I ain't gonna say nothing, but if we had Chris Tucker and Jackie Chan, 2nd place, Train to Busan. I kind of already talked about this. I think the makeup effects are really good. The ending is pretty good, but this movie is also so melodramatic. 1st place, Talk to Me. The best horror movie of 2023. Probably the movie I found the most genuinely scary in quite a while, but still a lot of fun. And after the reaction to Global Pursuit, watching this felt extra inspiring. I remember watching Raka Raka in middle school, and it's like, dude, they fucking made it. These YouTubers for real fucking made it. I always believed in them. They're living the dream, man. I love Talk to Me so much. It is thematically interesting. It's got twists and turns. It has some of the best prosthetic effects I've ever seen. The lead actress is literally phenomenal, and the premise is so relevant and modern that it only makes sense for this to have become the instant classic it is. September felt like a weird month. I felt a little homeless. I've been feeling homeless since then. Even when I'm back home in Virginia, it kind of doesn't feel like I'm supposed to be here. I traveled to Memphis to direct a music video for Fresco Trey. I had to do almost everything for this video, and also the label made us cut the intro, which was lame because that part made the rest of the video feel more personal and cathartic. But you know, it was cool. I stayed at Fresco Trey's house, and the night before the shoot, we watched the movie Security with a bunch of his friends. That movie is kind of weird. It keeps shifting tones between like serious, cool action thriller and goofy workplace comedy. It doesn't really work, but it was still like a very unique, cool experience I had watching a movie. You know, I really felt that cinema had the power to bring people together in that moment. Later in September, I went to this town called Willacoochee, Georgia to record sound and be an extra crew hand for this music video, documentary, social media content thing. That was a really shitty shoot. We got rained out and then our van got stuck in the mud. We had to get like pulled out by the sheriff, but it was worth it to go. You know, bad experiences are important too. And the crew I worked with were cool guys. And the artist was really nice. I can see why his hometown loves him and gave him the key to the city and all this other shit. I saw 22 films in September. My least favorite was Skinamarink. I'm sorry. It was just too boring. I don't really fuck with MatPat anymore, but I saw the film theory video about Skinamarink and it made me have an appreciation for the movie, but I really don't want to watch it again because it's just too slow. It's just too boring. I also did not think M3gan or Demon Seed were very good, but they weren't that bad either. The first movie I saw this month was The Flash, and I get why people hate this movie because like it sucks, right? Like as a movie, this is terrible. The CGI is atrocious, the fan service is egregious and genuinely disrespectful. The dialogue and the plot are both ridiculous and mostly nonsensical the entire time. But I kind of fuck with this movie, not so much as a film, but as a live action comic book. It truly embraces comic book bullshit to a level I've just never seen before. The movie doesn't give a fuck if you think the plot makes any sense, or if you know who any of these characters are, or why anything is happening. It's just concerned with this really bizarre story about one of the most overpowered and ridiculous characters in all of fiction. And honestly, the only reason I don't rate this movie even higher is because the immoral use of CGI versions of dead actors, that shit is crazy. And also because Ezra Miller is literally a psychopath. And also because I want DC to fail so that they have to hard reset with Superman Legacy, or maybe just like build around the Robert Pattinson Batman movies. That's what I would do. I saw quite a lot of good movies in September. Apocalypto is the Mayan historical epic I've always hoped exists. Amadeus and The Bridge on River Kwai are also amazing historical epics, but all three of these really couldn't be more different. I also saw Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning Part 1. The biggest problem with this movie is the title. Probably good they changed it. I enjoyed Rush and Roger Corman's The Mask of the Red Death. The best movie of the month is a tough choice. I haven't mentioned Knights of Cabiria yet, but that's a great movie. Julieta Messina gives a fantastic lead performance, and Fellini's direction is subtle yet powerful. You know what though? It's not a movie, but I'm gonna give the best first-time watch of the month to John Boy's The History of the Minnesota Vikings. It's not quite the tragedy of the Atlanta Falcons or the misadventure of the Seattle Mariners, but there's something deeply endearing about the Vikings and how they've always been almost there. As a Lions fan, I cannot say I'm rooting for them, but I can empathize with the struggle for second place. October was kind of a random month. If I was lost and homeless in September, I was in the fucking back rooms in October. I had been living with Zara and her cat at Dale's aunt's house in West Hills, just couch crashing. It was all right, despite how shitty the shower is. The main problem is I was just not working enough. I was sitting around a lot. I smoked too much. Was I literally in the back rooms? No, but I felt isolated, and I missed New York, and I missed being able to go places without a car, and I missed having shit to do. And I thought that I had more friends in LA than I did, and maybe that's my own fault, but I was feeling a little bit crazy, like I was in a series of eerie hallways with no beginning or end. I saw 24 movies this month. The best were The Exorcist 3, Dark City, Only Lovers Left Alive, Teeth, 21 Grams, Belfast, and Killers of the Flower Moon. Shout out to Martin Scorsese, man, what a fucking legend. He is still innovating and reinventing himself in his 80s. Fantastic performances and cinematography and music. Lily Gladstone will probably win an Oscar, which is great. Shout out to Native American actors of the past few years. Like, y'all been killing it. Now, my favorite movie that I saw in October, and probably my favorite movie I saw all year, was Fantastic Planet. This is a French animated film from 1973. I'd seen parts of this movie before, and I really loved the strange look of it and the weird sound of the music, but I hadn't seen it all the way through. In addition to the animation and music, I found myself really impressed by the story and the themes. I kind of thought this was mostly going to be a vibes-based movie, but no, it actually has a lot to say, both about how humans treat other species and about how humans treat other humans. But it's told from such a unique and unconventional perspective, and the story is told mostly through visuals, so it feels very universal, like it transcends culture and countries and shit. I don't want to say too much else about it before I see it again, but I recommend this movie to everyone. It might seem too weird and unapproachable for normies, but you know, it's only 70 minutes long, and because most of the storytelling is visual, it's the kind of thing where anybody could get something out of it. The worst movies I saw this month were After Earth, Unfriended, Hell House LLC, and Leprechaun in the Hood, which is probably my choice for the worst of October. This movie isn't scary at all, but it's also not funny. None of the jokes have aged well, and they just come across as offensive now. But beyond that, the premise isn't even interesting, the story gets really repetitive, and the characters are way too bland to get invested. I can't even remember if I finished watching this or I turned it off. I honestly cannot fucking remember. Not gonna lie, I think I was pretty depressed in November. Par for the course. I got to take care of Sergio some, which was great, and then later I brought him on the plane with me a few days before Thanksgiving. We went back to Virginia. It was so weird, like being in the airport with a dog. He pissed all over Atlanta. I watched 25 movies in November, starting off with a rewatch of Night of the Living Dead, which I actually watched on Halloween night, but I didn't log it until after midnight. Night of the Living Dead is such a good movie though, it's fucking unreal. Watching it back after not having seen it for over a decade, I was really struck by how much the filmmaking techniques in this movie had like a subtle influence over my own short films when I was young. Of course, you know, I made a lot of zombie movies, so there's that, but it goes beyond that. I think the way the violence was framed, using low angles to hide impact, the ideas of having all these characters stuck in one place and turning on each other. I don't think the influence was conscious, but it was fascinating to think about in retrospect. I also rewatched The Social Network this month, and it's still a masterpiece. The main reason I did this is because I was disappointed by the killer, but I honestly still kind of like that movie, and it's grown on me since I watched it. Some of my other favorites from November are Belly, which has one of the coolest aesthetics in any movie, Anatomy of a Fall, with crisp dialogue, great acting, tense pacing. Hail Caesar, this is one of the funniest Coen Brothers movies, and that's saying a lot. Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves, a really fun movie, but I think the long-ass title kind of turned people away from it. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Mutant Mayhem, has kind of the same problem, but I expect both of these movies to sort of pick up a following as time goes on. Damien Chazelle's Babylon was actually really great. I had heard a lot of mixed things about it, but I wish we got more movies that were just this bold. Kurosawa's Ikuru is also a really great movie, but it's super slow. Like, it is a bit of a chore to get through. My second favorite film of November is called Straight Up. It's kind of like an anti-romantic comedy. It definitely has quirky syndrome, but I think the snappy dialogue was funny and it's delivered so well. Plus, it's great to get some like openly asexual representation on screen. My favorite film of the month is Greg Araki's Mysterious Skin. This is a really dark movie. It's got young Joseph Gordon-Levitt and Brady Corbett, who play characters connected by an event in their childhood, and then we follow them later on as teenagers who are still dealing with the consequences in very different ways. This is one of those movies that just hurts to watch, the dark subject matter being one reason, but the use of dramatic irony. We know what's happened to Brady Corbett while he has to discover his own memories. It's just like, it's genuinely gut-wrenching. I saw a few pretty bad movies in November as well. The Lions getting their asses kicked on Thanksgiving was worse than any of them, but at least we're about to win the NFC Championship game and go to the Super Bowl. I remember when I thought we were going to the Super Bowl. Bad movies, right. Cocaine Bear, sorry, it was bad. Five Nights at Freddy's, sorry, also bad. The worst movie I saw this month is called Glorious. This is a film about a man trapped in a public restroom with a glory hole that talks to him. And on the other side of the glory hole is some Lovecraftian god voiced by J.K. Simmons. And that sounds awesome in theory, but there's just not enough going on here to justify this being a feature-length film. There is a clever twist in there at one point, but this movie is so fucking gross. I did have a good time watching it though. It's like something that's good to laugh at with a large group of people, but I will never watch this again. For the first half of December, I went back to Brooklyn. Then later, I came home to Virginia. We took the annual family trip to Florida and then got back just in time for New Year's Eve, which is when I started writing this script. And I wrote, "Do not ask me about New Year's Eve." So anyway, I'm back now. I went to LA and then New York again in January, but that's a different year. That's not what this is about. You're all caught up. I can't say what the future holds. I really don't fucking know. It's such a cliche to be in your early 20s and be like, wah, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know where I'm going. But, cliches exist for a reason. That would probably make a nice segue into talking about a movie, but I am not clever enough to make that connection right now. I watched 29 films in December, the last 4 of which were the Wes Anderson Roald Dahl short films on Netflix. I mostly watched these to boost my stats and get to 200, though I actually thought I only made it to 199. Sometimes the way that Letterboxd counts movies doesn't feel totally consistent. The short films were pretty solid, although there's one that obviously just has a lot more production value. Now, there were some really disappointing movies I watched this month. I expected more out of The Prince of Egypt, but maybe I didn't like it because I'm not religious. I expected more out of Napoleon, but maybe I didn't like it because I'm not French. Although honestly, I don't think Ridley Scott likes French people very much, or Napoleon at all. My least favorite movie of the month also has Joaquin Phoenix, and that is Beau is Afraid. Now, I didn't really expect to like this movie because I'm not, a big Ari Aster fan, but I was so dumbfounded by what this movie was even trying to accomplish. I actually was kind of into it in the beginning. I really liked the nightmarish urban environment that Joaquin Phoenix lives in. It's very over the top, but it's anxiety inducing and feels, appropriately strange. The thing is, the movie just kept taking left turns. Where was it even going? And I get that, it's unpredictable and you're getting dragged along for the ride. But if that's the case, I would like to get dragged along with some characters I am actually capable of caring about. And I really think that Beau is possibly the worst protagonist ever. It is pretty hard to make a movie where the whole conceit of the main character is that they're too frozen with anxiety to advance the plot. But that's what this movie does, and that's probably why it takes 3 hours to get through. And by the ending of the movie, it's still taking all of these left turns that have ceased even attempting to have meaning beyond being like, whoa, isn't this so crazy? Isn't this so weird and unexpected and Freudian? And I just found this all so annoying. I really could not stand it. But there's still plenty to appreciate about this movie. The blending of live action and animation sequence in the middle is pretty cool, and it's all shot pretty well, and there are some neat editing transitions. So it wasn't for me, it was not my thing, but I recommend watching it for yourself. But it is 3 hours long and all of the other stuff I said. So proceed with caution. There were a lot of movies that I really liked in December though. Beyond the Infinite 2 Minutes is a little bit dumb and it just keeps falling apart conceptually as you're watching it despite how much explaining they do. But the gimmick was interesting enough to keep me entertained for the short runtime. But I'm also just a slut for time travel, so there's that. Shiva Baby and Bottoms are both pretty good. I especially loved Bottoms because it goes so much more over the top than I was expecting. And I also didn't know Marshawn Lynch was in it, and he is fucking hilarious. Also, Ayo Edebiri, one of my favorite people. She's great in this. She's amazing in The Bear, and she is the single best account you can follow on Letterboxd. The 1931 Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde was a lot more visually inventive than I expected, but the story was still kind of messy. How to Blow Up a Pipeline. This is a movie that I've always wanted to exist, and the execution of it was perfect. It does so much to create suspense and involve you with the characters. Seriously, I cannot recommend How to Blow Up a Pipeline enough. Everybody go watch that right now. Godzilla -1. This manages to be completely awesome at the same time as being poetically tragic, at the same time as being truly inspiring. Just a great fucking movie, regardless of if you like Godzilla or not. May, December, this was really well acted. Grand Illusion, that felt like a classic, but there were too many characters for me to keep track of, just old white people. They Live, this was peak camp and peak satire at the same time. That fight scene is amazing. The Phantom of the Paradise is also pretty campy, but at the same time, it's one of the most visually breathtaking movies I've ever seen. The production design and the lighting is just incredible. It's so creative. This is definitely my favorite Brian De Palma movie. I was really surprised to find that I liked Saltburn. I think there have been a lot of uncharitable misreads of this movie going around on Twitter, but I don't really want to open that can of worms. I'll just say I think this movie is well shot, it's well acted, and really entertaining. While I was in Florida, I saw Another Round. That's solid, but I was hoping there was going to going to be a bit more to it. I also rewatched The Iron Giant and My Neighbor Totoro during the car ride. And both of these are true classics of animation, and they complement each other beautifully. Now, this wasn't the last movie I saw all year, but I saved it for last because this is one of the best movies I have ever seen in my life. Poor Things, directed by Yorgos Lanthimos. I loved The Favorite, I loved The Killing of a Sacred Deer, I loved the first half of The Lobster and the second half of Dogtooth. Lanthimos, he has this style of deadpan dialogue and the use of fisheye lenses and his uncomfortable comedy that could become horror at any second. It's all just really appealing to me. He has such a unique voice as a filmmaker, and I think he just takes things to a completely new level with this movie. He doubled down on being more bizarre and more disgusting and more philosophically confounding and more aesthetically strange, and it all just landed perfectly. I didn't know anything about the story headed in. That was such a good move because I was able to be surprised by what the actual concept of the film was, and it's such a strange idea, but it's so interesting, and it allows for Emma Stone to give the best performance of the year. She literally basically goes through all of human experience, but it all feels grounded within the character. Mark Ruffalo, also incredible in this. His comedic timing and deliveries are the stuff of legend, I swear to God. Poor Things is not going to be for everyone. There were people in my theater who actually walked out midway through, like several groups of people, but genuinely, I cannot say enough good things about it. It's my favorite film of 2023 and possibly the best movie I watched in all of 2023. You know, it's kind of a tie with Fantastic Planet. Outro time. Thank you for watching and all that. You know, like, comment, subscribe. I don't know. If you made it this far, you're probably someone I know in real life, but thanks just as much. I feel like I've talked enough. I don't know what to say about 2024. So far, it's been... I think I want to watch 365 movies this year. No, 366. It's a leap year. But filmmaking will always take priority over film watching, so I'm not going to totally hold myself to that. Now, at the end of last year's video, I really had a plan, you know? I was gonna watch all these TV shows, I was gonna work a full-time job, I was gonna infiltrate NYU, become a world-class writer-director, and things did not work out even close to how I expected. And so this year I have no plan. I have no expectations. I'm kind of worried about myself. Like, am I okay? Am I gonna be okay? I don't know. Bye.